Good morning, everyone from the United Kingdom, although it is the afternoon here. And welcome to Technovation's International Day of the Girl celebration. My name is Sona Caregani, and I'm the head of the UK government's Office for Artificial Intelligence, where we are putting in place the foundations to underpin the adoption of AI and data technologies across the country and across the economy for the betterment of society. For the past year, I've also joined the Technovation family as a board member, which has been truly brilliant. What drew me to Technovation was the organization's impact and commitment to empowering girls and families to use cutting edge tools like AI and providing them with the mentorship they need to tackle real world problems and to lead innovation in their countries. AI is shaping the future. You can see this by how fast the field is growing, how front and center the topic is across countries, and how much companies are investing. This is up to $324 billion on AI related software, hardware, and services in 2021 alone. But right now, too many people, especially women and people of color, don't have a voice or influence in creating these technologies. And Technovation is changing that. And all of us want to be and should be part of this movement. To date, Technovation has served over 300,000 participants across over 120 countries, empowering girls to use AI to develop innovative solutions to the problems they experience firsthand. Girls from around the world have created AI-based prototypes to solve their challenges, such as recognizing invasive species in Bolivia, native birds in Kuwait, crop diseases in northern India, reducing air pollution in Brazil, helping the deaf communicate in Mexico, monitoring lung health, and so much more. It is the power of these examples that makes AI real. Today, on International Girl Day, on the International Day of the Girl, I should say, I am excited to be joined by the amazing Lilly Ibrahim, who is the Chief Operating Officer of DeepMind. DeepMind is a team of scientists, engineers, ethicists, and more committed to solving intelligence to advance science and benefit humanity. If you don't know about this company, they're incredible. Definitely go and look them up at some point today. And we're also joined by Technovation alumna Michelle Mukel to discuss how we can inspire and empower more girls and women around the world to tackle real world problems using AI. Before we launch in, though, I think it's worth a couple of minutes to introduce you to properly to both Lila and Michelle. As well as being the COO at DeepMind, Lila is also a board chair of Team for Tech. Previously, Lila was Chief Operating Officer of Coursera. Lila joined Coursera as its first president in August 2013, bringing over 20 years of experience in rapid technology and market growth, including more than a dozen years focused in education technology specifically. Lila spent 18 years at Intel before that, holding multiple impactful engineering and marketing positions, starting as a Pentium microprocessor designer, which is amazing, and then being promoted to chief of staff for Intel CEO and chairman. And then after that, she rose to the general manager for the company's education product sector and oversaw design, development, and business strategy in penetrating both emerging and developing markets. One of the many successes that Lila had in that role included a national initiative with Portugal that resulted in distributing 400,000 PCs into classrooms and training 30,000 teachers in 1 year. Lila's achievements have garnered international recognition, and we are so lucky to have her here with us today. Now on to Michelle, who is an absolute inspiration on her own. Michelle is 16-year-old ocean hero. She's a Conrad Challenge Innovator and Technovation Regional winner from Kisumu, Kenya. After participating in Ocean Heroes Virtual Bootcamp in 2020, Michelle and her brother Jeremy decided that they wanted to restore Lake Victoria. So just a little, a small goal. They wanted to start by eradicating plastic pollution. They started the OCEP Sango, which is the Friends of Lake Victoria, an organization working towards restoring Lake Victoria to its pristine condition through the Bring Back Lake Victoria campaign. The campaign has managed to not only start a conversation on plastic pollution in the Lake Victoria Basin, but also to mobilize people around East Africa and the world to restore Lake Victoria. She and her brother, Jeremy, are now building an app, Ziwa Safi, to collect data on plastic pollution in the Lake Basin. She's passionate about a development model that allows developing countries to grow their economies without destroying their natural resources. Michelle, you're an absolute inspiration. I am so excited to be here today to join you and Lila and have a chat. So with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. It's so amazing to be here with you guys today. It's a real dream come true, and I'm so excited to just learn from you and your experience. So, my first question today is actually just that it's really super inspiring to have you guys as role models, especially on the road to AI. So, could you please share how you got here and why did you say yes to AI in the first place?
Lila, why don't you go first, since I think everyone's tired of hearing me speak first.
Give you a break. Thank you. Thank you, Sona, and thank you, Michelle, so much for having me with you today. It's interesting. So as Sona said, I have spent about 30 years of my career in technology, but my background is very different than AI. When I was even earlier in my career, I didn't know what artificial intelligence was. Never, let alone did I ever think that I would actually be joining into this field. So in 2017, I was approached about an opportunity with a company called DeepMind in London. At the time, I was in Silicon Valley, and I had just been working to help entrepreneurs build companies, and then went into the company called Coursera. And I helped to build that company, and it was quite an exciting time, but I was also a little bit tired after 3 decades of work. So I was going to take a year off to recuperate and think what I wanted to do next. And I was approached by DeepMind. And I thought, well, why would they want to hire me? I don't have a background in artificial intelligence. Sure, I know technologies, and I've worked on some technologies and introducing them to the first time into the world, like something called DVD, you may have heard of, and that was quite popular at one point. But I got to work on the standards for that, or even the brain of the computer, but not necessarily in software. And I watched a movie called AlphaGo, and it's about DeepMind's technology and the first time the computer played the game of Go and did quite well. I will not give you a spoiler alert for that. But I spent a lot of time talking with the company and talking with the scientists and the engineers and understanding what was needed. And I have to say that it excited me because DeepMind's approach to advanced AI systems was quite different and very exciting and inspiring to think, how can you solve intelligence and then use it to benefit humanity? And the more I learned, the more I felt a moral calling. I thought, how can I bring my 3 decades of bringing new technologies for benefiting humanity? How can I think about AI, and what have I learned over those decades that we can use for doing this with advanced AI? If I wanted to do just standard artificial intelligence, I could have stayed in Silicon Valley, but there was something very unique and very special about DeepMind's approach, which helped me and my family convince us to move from Silicon Valley over here into London. And I have to tell you, sometimes not being the expert in artificial intelligence is where I bring the most value, because I can ask questions like, well, tell me a little bit more about that. And have you thought about this? And sometimes those are the most important questions in the room, because I can bring that diversity of perspective with the experience that I have over the decades.
That's absolutely amazing, Lila. Sana, would you like to share your experience?
Sure. I mean, I think you'll start to hear quite a lot of similarities between Lila and I suspect, any woman in fields like these, right? So I didn't start off my career thinking that I was going to go into AI or I'd end up in the place that I'm in. I have been in tech for over 20 years. I did a computer science degree. I'm pretty good at maths. It was just stuff that I always liked. And I guess from a very early age, I stopped caring what other people thought, and just kind of decided to do the thing I was good at. And rather than looking at who was surrounding me in a classroom or in university or even at work, for example. So I think I kind of got into tech. I worked in a big tech company doing software development, working on simulators, and then I decided I had too much energy. I was young, and I wanted to do some startups. And so I moved from Canada, where I was from, to the US, where things move a little bit faster, and joined a couple of startups. And one of the startups I joined was a facial recognition company. And so, yeah, and that's kind of the story. I got into AI through the back door, basically. And much like Lila, I was doing product management for them. I wrote code for them, and I asked a lot of questions. And very soon figured out that actually my power was in being able to translate what the developers meant. Trying to explain that to the rest of the company was the power that I held. And so I would get wheeled out at various points in time to explain what was happening. And so I thought, you know what, maybe I'll develop that part of myself. So I did an MBA, but I didn't do it far from my calling. I did it at MIT. So I stayed close to tech even during that period. And then moved into consulting, and from consulting to policy. And yeah, my role continues to be that translation of, why technology is important, the role that technology plays in the economy. I find that people who are really good at technology and developing technology often don't speak the same language as everybody else. And so being that translator in between seemed to be the place, the kind of spot that I filled. But very much like Lila, I often bring the questions to the table. I force a lot of people to speak until everybody understands them. And often I ask so many questions that people get up and draw on a piece of paper for me. And I always find that once they get up and start drawing on the whiteboard, we're on our way to discovery. But yeah, so that's my story.
Wow, I mean, both of your stories are so awesome, and I love how there are similarities between asking questions and going towards what draws you, and it's absolutely amazing, and they're so inspiring. So, both of you being ladies that have been in the technology field for longer than I've been alive and are currently on the front lines of AI development in what it can do to solve some of our world's pressing problems. From your perspective, what are some frontiers for AI over the next few years, and why should we care about AI?
I'm going to pass this over to Lila, because arguably DeepMind is at the very frontier doing all those discoveries right now.
Well, it's a great question, Michelle. One of the things that we believe at DeepMind is we first started off trying to test our theory about whether we could solve intelligence with artificial intelligence by developing advanced AI systems that would play video games, because there's a reward function. You can tell if it's learning by how long it's playing and the score that it gets. But then it was taking that similar approach and applying it not just to one game, but to multiple games. And then it was like, okay, well, if it can do the games in this simulated environment, can it help us solve other things like true scientific advancement? So with that as background and context, one of the areas that we've been really focused on is an area called protein folding. And so we have this belief that if we can solve some of the fundamental areas of science, then we can open up entire fields for other scientists to continue to build upon and do discoveries. And protein in particular has been, there's this competition that's held that is about, can you can you predict the way that a protein will fold? That will determine its function. And if you can understand the function, then maybe you can understand when it misfolds and causes diseases, or if can you use this protein folding to also understand things like how to deal with industrial waste so that you can work on environmental cleanup, etc. So using, building off of decades of work that scientists have been doing, where maybe one PhD student would spend their entire studies trying to understand and predict how one protein would fold, we were able to apply some of our advanced AI systems to help the organization calls, like, we solved the protein folding problem. Now, we didn't completely solve it. There's still like some tweaks that need to be made, but we've opened up an entirely new field based on this advancement. And in partnership with the scientific community, they can now leverage the experience that we've been able to provide, or the database, and do things like drug discovery, better understanding diseases, applying it towards environmental solutions, etc. And so this is kind of the approach that we're taking of, like, what are some of the big challenges in the world, and how with advanced AI systems and human involvement can we partner with the technology, use the technology as a tool to do this. And you can tell by solving some of these big problems, there is an element of the AI, how do you understand, from a science and engineering perspective, but you can also see the responsibility that comes along with doing this work. So, for example, what is our responsibility? How do you apply ethics and morals and values into a technical space like this? How do we think about going in and partnering with scientists who may be using this technology for good? So there's a lot of other areas around the technology itself that we need to be very thoughtful, bring diverse perspectives to the table, and do it in partnership with society in general.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it's amazing to visualize a future where we are seeing AI being used to solve problems among scientists, doctors, healthcare workers, everyone. And would you imagine that in the future we'd actually be able to use AI to solve complex diseases, even as they come up?
Oh, I sure hope, after the past 2 years, right? This is one of the things we're really hoping, is that we can accelerate our understanding of diseases so that we can find cures sooner. I think the timing of the pandemic, again, as a backdrop against some of the advancements here, is quite powerful. And candidly, one of my main motivations for coming into this field in general was I have 11-year-old twin daughters. And I think about their future and their careers, and even whether they go into technology. I hope they go into STEM like me. An engineer would be very good. But regardless of that, I think AI will be everywhere. And being literate in technology is going to help them make contributions and have fulfillment. So I do hope that if there are, as diseases or other challenges come up, that your generation will have the responsibility of how can you leverage technology, how can you utilize technology to find solutions faster that benefit a broader range of humanity.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to second Lila's point, I think another view in this is that governments all over the world are investing huge sums of money in tech and AI, because there's a belief that these technologies are going to define the future. So, if it's not enough that companies like DeepMind are making discoveries that will, properly change the way that we diagnose or foresee or use medicine going forward, governments are definitely betting big that that AI technologies are going to define the future of the world.
I think that's absolutely wonderful to hear, because we can definitely see that the world is shifting towards technology and looking to it to create solutions to a lot of pressing problems. And I agree with both of you in the fact that the future is going to be very AI and technology focused. And because of that, there needs to be more ways to involve young people in AI and show them and help them chart the way to the future. And this is why I love Technovation, because Technovation opens the door to STEM education for girls and underrepresented communities. And one exciting thing is that for the 2022 season, they've committed to incorporating AI into their curriculum. So, my question for the both of you is, what do you see as the greatest impact this change will have for the 20,000 plus girls who will learn to use AI to tackle real world problems?
Oh, Michelle, this is amazing. I mean, I'm going to steal Lila's answer before she gives it, which is, the solution, or the way to make technologies like AI solve real world challenges, is by making sure we get the representation right. And we don't have that right now. We don't have the right representation of people developing AI solutions, as we have society who's using these solutions, right? And by giving the opportunity, by broadening that out, by having bigger challenges, different life experiences that lead to solving those challenges, having a diverse set of thinkers in a room solving those challenges, that is the way that we're going to make sure that AI is able to benefit everybody.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Lila, would you like to add?
I think that's spot on. I think Sana, like she said, she stole my answer, which we're very aligned in this, candidly, which is why we're here. Like, we both really care about this, and we have an opportunity to work together on the UK government's AI Council. And even when I look back, when I started electrical engineering in university, there weren't that many women in my classroom, and throughout my career, there still has not been as many women, and generally, how do we think about better representation, not just gender, but nationalities, experiences, diversity of thought. So I'm really excited about what Technovation is doing to help inspire and provide opportunities for you all to learn and to connect and be connected not only to each other, but also to mentors, because it's also a great learning experience for mentors. I think sometimes I've been fortunate to have had the opportunity to mentor young women. And I always find that, like, I do it to try to give back. And what I realize is I get so much out of it too, my own experience. So, and I can bring that experience also, that diversity of experience, into my work as well, which is, very rewarding.
Yeah, I think those are both absolutely perfect answers, and they make me so excited for the future of AI and what we're actually going to be able to do with technology through this season of Technovation. And if you're an individual or a corporation looking to support STEM education and gender equity in AI, please let Technovation know by visiting www.technovation.org/women in AI and fill out their contact form. Thank you. um, so our next question actually leads right into what you said about mentoring, Lila. A key component of Technovation is actually mentoring, and I was able to build out Siwasafi only because of my mentor Dorcas's support. She was encouraging, she helped me answer questions, and she pushed me to go further. And it's important for young people to know about AI, but I think adults need to know about it too. Many adults are afraid of automation and losing jobs to robots, and I've experienced this view personally when we're doing research for Ziwasafi. So, for these types of adults, what would you say to them? This is specifically for Sana.
Yeah. Like, where did I put this? So, I think a couple of things come to mind, right? Jeffrey Hinton, who some people refer to as the godfather of AI, right? Often says that today's AI is tomorrow's computer science, right? So when you make a discovery in artificial intelligence and it becomes mass produced and everybody is using it, it's no longer looked at as this big scary artificial intelligence thing. it becomes a piece of technology that you depend on. And I think one of the areas that's really, really important is in getting the communication around these technologies right, is just the way that we talk about them, to help the public perception be closer to the reality of where these systems are. So in terms of kind of automation and robotics and artificial intelligence technologies taking people's jobs, there's definitely going to be a change in the way that people work. There's going to be a change in the types of jobs that we all have, and in how we do those jobs. But that's also happened in previous technology revolutions, right? I think we want to, as a species, to continue evolving and improving, right? And getting better at making sure that we live longer, healthier lives, and we use our planet as in the best ways possible. And these are technologies that help solve some of the biggest challenges that we have. And so, yes, I think if from grandiose to reality, we're far away from, everyday jobs being taken away by AI. And there are specific things that humans can do that artificial intelligence technologies really have problems with. I mean, an example is if you have a room full of a whole bunch of your kids' toys, a robot is going to have a real trouble walking through that room, whereas even a 2-year-old might stop and play with some of those toys, but will be able to make it from one side of the room to another, right? So there are definitely, we've got a long way to go before these jobs get taken, first. And second, technology has traditionally created a lot more jobs than it's destroyed in the economy. So there is a lot of work to do, and I can tell you for sure that there is across governments, across the world, internationally, looking at the future of work and having national retraining schemes and support for the population to prepare them for this eventuality exists. And there's a lot of thinking and work going on into that. But we are also very optimistic that we're going to create a lot more jobs through these opportunities than destroy.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. And just a follow-up question to that. I mean, you mentioned that a lot of governments are investing, and it's wonderful to hear that they're actually planning for the future of work. So, in terms of reducing that fear, what platforms would you use to create more awareness amongst adults to get them to realize that this is actually going to be a good thing, and it's not going to be AI isn't going to take over the world and destroy the human race?
Well, I think there's a big public perception piece to this that the AI Council that Lila sits on is looking at and trying to work through. But I would mention a couple of other things. So Coursera, that Lila used to work at, offers an enormous amount of free courses that are available that talk about AI and help people understand what these things are. Also in Europe, we have something called the Elements of AI, which is another free set of courses that are that are available across Europe, and they are very helpful in explaining what these technologies are and how to get involved if you're interested. But there are other schemes as well. So I've got a few in the UK that I can talk about, but there are schemes across the world that are aiming to do a lot of the same things.
Michelle, may
Wow.
I add something, if you
Of
don't
course.
mind? It's interesting. We were talking about how long Sana and I have been in the technology industry, and in the 90s, I was in a company called Intel, which, if you ever saw Intel Inside, it makes the brains of the inside of the computer. And we were introducing computers into areas of the world where there had never been technology. And one of the lessons I learned during that time was, first of all, it wasn't just about the technology. You needed the internet to connect. And I'll never forget even being in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, and we were working in an island village, putting some computers and internet technology in place. And people were wondering, like, oh no, are we taking away jobs? But then we worked with some of the high school students, the senior school students, to learn about how to use the technology to do some first pass medical care and connect to the hospitals and connect to the libraries. And we worked with the teachers to make sure that the computers in the classroom were really supporting the local curriculum. And we had a saying at the time that computers aren't magic, teachers are. And it's really actually about the mentors. Like, they don't necessarily need to be experts at the technology, but they can help unlock the ideas and the creativity that the youth have around how to use the technology as a tool. And I think that's actually been a benefit of some of maybe what Sana and I are bringing into our jobs, is that we have seen some of these technology transformations over the years, and they haven't taken away jobs from farmers. In fact, it's helped farmers understand maybe how the environmental conditions so that they can plan better, or how to do some interventions. And I think this is really what's important, is there may be an underlying technology like artificial intelligence, but it's really how can you apply it locally, both globally and locally, to solve real problems that different communities are facing. And again, this goes back to, like, you need diversity of perspective in order to make that connection and understanding and solve the problems like you did with your program and your project that really matter to the local community.
Wow, thank you so much. That's an absolutely inspiring answer, and it makes me so excited to actually start the Technovation season and solve another problem, because yes, I do believe that education and teachers and mentoring are the key. And then of course using it and showing people that, look, this can actually solve a lot of the problems you're experiencing here. And following up on that, actually, what is your advice for people who want to innovate inside of big organizations? How do you drive change and get people to follow your vision? Because both of you have worked at large organizations around the world and have, of course, driven innovation within them.
Well, I think one of the keys for me is always how do you bring curiosity into your job and a desire to learn and contribute? When I was earlier in my career, I was always very quick if there was an opportunity to learn or to be part of a team, or whether it was a small project or a big project, of like raising my hand and volunteering. And what I learned as I got more experience in my career was sometimes it's the people who are new who bring in these fresh perspectives, and they see solutions that others who may be more established in their roles or in the organization may not see. So we used to have this joke of, like, if you have a really challenging problem, like, make sure on your team, you build that diversity and experience too, so that you can have some combination and unlock ideas. When you're looking for jobs, one of the things that you need to remember is it's not just about whether the organization wants to hire you, it's about whether you want to be in that organization. And if your values and if your culture align to the organization, so that you can bring your best self into that role, right? And into, like, if you want to have a lot of opportunities, and making sure that this is a type of place that will do that. So I think that's it's maybe a little bit early for you, but my sense is that you will have a pretty fast career track. So I want to make sure I get my advice into you right now.
Thank you.
Single best piece of advice.
Go ahead, Sana.
Get you. I said that was Lila's advice is the single best piece of advice, that you're interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. You should definitely always remember that. The only thing I would add to Lila's answer around innovating in a large organization is not letting closed doors stop you, right? What happens in a big organization is kind of groupthink, and this is the way we do things here, and And it's not a shortcoming. It's just it's human nature, right? We as humans like to be productive and cut corners. And if we know that, going from A to B, you can get there through this route, well, we just keep doing it, and it's the tried and tested route. And so, if you come in and you want to do something differently, and it needs to take a new route, it takes convincing people. So understand your area, know what it is that you want to do, do a lot of active listening. People might try and stand in the way, but they'll have a reason for it. So try and understand that. And then, push through the barriers and get it done. I definitely believe in creativity forming a big part of my jobs and the jobs that I've done in the past. So yeah, just keep going is my is my advice.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, you two are so inspiring, and it's really amazing getting to learn from your experiences. I mean, this is wonderful. So on the topic actually of ethics and values, there is a strong component of justice and human rights in AI. And in your role, how do you ensure that what you are doing and building is just and fair? This is for both you and Lila.
I can, I'll start maybe, and then Sana can add in. I can tell you about the company perspective. So part of this is you have to, first of all, if you're in an organization that feels this responsibility, then you need to figure out how to take that idea and put it into action inside the organization. So, for example, one of the things that we do is we get together different people from around the company. We have a special group that meets to talk about our early stage research and try to understand, how could this actually be beneficial to the world? What might the risks be? Can we solve these risks? And usually we can't solve them on our own. So we have to figure out who we want to partner with externally. And maybe who do we want to fund to help, or how do we bring in that outside perspective so we can be more thoughtful as we're developing this to understand the risk and try to mitigate it. And so again, you can imagine by having a diverse group of people around the table talking about this, you're bringing in and really thinking through things differently. One of the challenges when you're doing very early stage research is you don't necessarily, sometimes the researchers and the scientists have a hard time imagining all the different ways that the technology can be used. So taking our time to start very early, because what you don't want to have happen is you develop something and then you're ready to release it. And then you're like, oh, well, how should we think about releasing this responsibly? But at that point, it's too late. You need to be thinking about it from very early on so that you can make sure that you're doing so in a responsible way, you're mitigating the risk, and you're partnering with the parts of society where this may be impacted. I have to tell you that this sounds easy, and it's really, really hard to do because we all have different expectations of what's right or wrong or our responsibility. And the thing that we really have to do is allow the time to ask the questions, to create the culture where it's okay to have these conversations, and you want to encourage having some constructive debate on some of these topics. And then also, once you make a decision, new information will become available. Like Sana was talking about image recognition, right? And facial recognition, where that industry was years ago versus where it is now is very different. So you have to always be keeping your eyes and ears open and to continue to revisit decisions that you've made and understanding of things so that you can ensure that, I mean, again, we're being very driven by our mission, which is we want to advance science and benefit humanity. So we're always kind of coming back to like, what have we learned? So this continuous learning and the asking the questions and the curious mindset is really key.
That's amazing. I love the focus on constantly looking at and understanding the impact of your work and, of course, creating the space for debate. Sana, would you like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I can add from a government perspective. So when we set out on the journey to make AI one of the central pillars of, for the UK government, um, the UK created three institutions. So one was the Office for AI, one is the AI Council, which is the advisory group, the independent advisory group that helps us think through all the knotty challenges, which Lila sits on. And the third organization is called the Center for Data Ethics and Innovation. And that's all about balancing ethics and innovation. So it's all about looking ahead at which policy shortfalls and areas that we need to be aware of as we embark on these kind of emerging technologies. As Lila was saying, when you start innovating, you don't often see the whole end-to-end picture, right? So you need to be aware, and you need to create the safe spaces for those conversations to happen, and you need to ask the questions, right? And having an organization that's got their ear to the ground and thinking about those things from the outset is really important. The other thing I would say is that, often we take risks, and you spread your bets, right? But when it comes to AI technologies, safe and ethical AI or responsible AI, designing that from the outset, there is no other bet. That is the full and total and complete only bet, right? We don't want to move fast, break things, and worry about it later. It's too important and too powerful a set of technologies to not be thinking about these questions from the outset, right? And so ethicists, and designing from the beginning with with thinking about responsible and ethical AI at the center and core of everything that we do is hugely important for the work that we do, the innovating that we do, and eventually the way that we govern these technologies as well.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I love the answers you both gave, because it's true that when you begin to experiment with anything, including AI, you're not really sure what the impact is going to be. So I love that you talked about creating a safe space to learn from each other, to make sure that you know what the impacts are going to be, but also to make sure that you're understanding as you go along that this is what we want to do and this is how we're going to make sure it doesn't hurt anyone. So I think that's truly amazing. And my next question actually is, what advice do you have for the 100,000 Technovation alumni around the world who have gone through the experience of finding a real problem and launching a technology solution for it? They are young, driven, curious, confident, and want to make the world better with technology. So, what are some strategies that you'd recommend to them for connecting with governments and industry so their efforts can have more impact? This is a question to both of you.
Um, So I'm going to say what I say to my mentees. Lila, I totally agree, by the way. I often walk away feeling guilty that I was more inspired from the mentoring experience than my mentees were. But one thing I say to young women, or actually, young people in general, who are embarking on this journey is, never be afraid to ask a question, but also never be afraid to just, cold call somebody. Like, so, if you have a question, if you want to get involved, then find your way in, right? Closed doors should, you should just think about that as the specific route you're taking. Find another one, find a different way to find your answer. Passion, drive, doing something you're excited and interested in, finding a way to solve a challenge. Those are the things that are hard to teach, right? So you've got the basis for greatness and success. So don't let anything stand in your way would be my advice.
That's great. And what I would add to that is, undoubtedly, at some point in your career, you will face challenges and feel like maybe you're not making progress to what you expect, and embrace those as opportunities to learn. Do not let them get the better of you. Stay strong, stay courageous, ask questions. And what I find is when I'm entering a time that I think might be uncertain, I invest in having the right people around me. So think about your board of advisors. Who are your mentors and the other people that when you know you're going to be facing some challenges that you know you can go to, and they can help be the inspiration and support and strength to help you solve the problems. And Michelle, may I ask you a question? Do you mind?
Yes, of course.
Okay, let me flip this around.
Go ahead.
So Sana and I mentor a lot of young people. And even today, I think we're probably both finding this incredibly inspiring to hear your story. What advice do you have for us and for other mentors so that we can have a good impact on the folks that we partner with?
Of course. I think the one thing I would actually say is you don't have to have all the answers, but it's amazing when you can inspire curiosity and show your mentees where they can find the answers. And this worked for me specifically with my mentor because, we wanted to do something really ambitious. I remember and we were asking her, I was asking her, I wanted to do this thing where like it could actually pinpoint the location of a beach where you wanted to find lots of trash. So this was a really ambitious design, and she could have actually told me, Michelle, you don't need this in your app. What you need to do instead is just like focus on the trash collecting bit. But instead she understood why I wanted to do that, and she realized that because we've organized cleanups before and sometimes we'd struggle to find beaches as Bring Back Lake Victoria. So instead she said, you know what if it was possible to actually use Google Maps and then create code that would tell it like, take this to Dunga Beach, as in you find the polluted beaches and you log that data and tell Google Maps, when this button is clicked, take them to Dunga Beach. So like, as we went through that process, it actually became better. And now, even right now, I'm still thinking of ways like I can actually start telling it, using satellites and stuff to track trash on beaches within Kisumu. So, just being able to say, I'm not sure, but we can figure this out, actually helped me and gave me the confidence to say that means we can actually learn as we go along. It's okay. So that's definitely something I tell mentors, inspire that curiosity. You don't have to know everything, but tell them to dream big and that they can always figure out how to put in that feature. Like, that's the one thing I would say.
That's an awesome answer.
It's a really awesome answer, Michelle. I mean, you're properly an inspiring 16-year-old. I mean, in comparison to, I think I was stacking shelves or something at your age. So
thank you so much. So final question. This has been such an amazing discussion. My final question for both of you is, what makes you hopeful for the future? I mean, there's a lot going on right now with climate change, and we've just come out of a pandemic, and there are all these bleak projections. So when you think about all of it, what makes you hopeful about basically everything?
Well, you.
like that's literally my answer. You, young people like you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I actually think, if there's going to be something we all learned from the global pandemic, is that your generation, I think, is going to find new ways to approach problems. And you've seen the challenges that the world can face in its togetherness, and how, and I'm hopeful that my daughters and that you and your generation will chart a new path forward. And hopefully we'll leave the place with the right tools and the kind of clear a little bit of the path for you to be able to go further faster.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I am so inspired by the younger generation. I look at you, and I look at the problems you're facing, the challenges you're solving at earlier ages, the way that you're approaching these as we, not me. And it's just incredibly inspiring to me. And it makes me happy to have my children join forces, and be able to do that. And you know, as much, like Lila said, as much as we can do to create paths that you guys can kind of really destroy and build highways on, that's you know, the least we can do. But I can see it coming, and it's just so exciting. And I love it, and I'm so proud to be here to witness it. You know, it the start of it. So I'm yeah, it's just incredible.
Yeah, thank you so much. You're making me feel all warm inside. But yeah. That's absolutely amazing, because seeing how technology is already revolutionizing the world, I mean, it's allowing us to build literal continental networks with people from all around the world. I mean, you're in the UK. I'm not sure where Lila is, but you see, so it's really cool to see young girls getting inspired and starting to say, like, we can actually use this to solve problems in our community. And I remember I told you once that for me, Technovation changed my experience completely, because whereas you guys mentioned walking into a room full of men the first time you entered the tech space, for me it was completely different, and it was a room full of girls. So it's exciting. I'm excited for
So
the new
cool.
season, and it's going to be so cool to see like what we continue to do, because right now we are charting the path to the future. And thank you for such an inspiring conversation. I'm going to take lots of notes, especially you've given me so much to think about, and given me a lot of clarity, and made me and gotten me so inspired and so excited to use AI to actually solve a lot of the problems I'm already seeing around me. So thank you so much.
Michelle, it's been an incredible pleasure. Thank you very much. Lila, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing.
So I just want to bring us to a close. Thank you very much for sticking around. I know we went over time a little bit, but it was hard not to. Michelle is so inspiring for all of us. So on that note, I want to invite each and every one of you who to be curious about AI, and to get involved. This coming season, Technovation is inviting girls ages 8 to 18 to work in teams with their parents and their mentors to develop solutions to pressing problems in their communities. If you're an individual, you can mentor Technovation girls and help them contribute their unique perspectives through a citizen science model, where teams can use mobile technologies to augment national and global data sets, resulting in more innovative solutions to the Sustainable Development Goals. If you're an industry partner, we'd love to invite volunteers to mentor Technovation teams, give feedback on their apps, inspire the girls, or help develop curriculum. We would love to invite government representatives to implement real-world problem-solving curriculum for youth that helps them practice the skills they'll need as adults as they grapple with complex problems ranging from climate disasters to pandemics. This should be accompanied by focused efforts to build technical capacity in educators, helping them learn and teach real-world problem solving with AI. Technovation's multi-generational model provides multiple pathways to upskill adults and prepare them for rapidly changing workforce. And finally, we invite leaders to amplify the voices of young women and technology innovators, so that more women are part of the important decisions that need to be made on the path to sustainable development. These capacity building efforts in parallel will help strengthen our communities, making people more curious, technically confident, open-minded, and civically engaged. Empowering girls is our pathway to resilient communities. So come join me in Technovation in getting this mission off the road. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope to see you again soon.